Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The sunlight, refracted amber through the ice in the whiskey glass, shone on Nathan's hands, hands that belonged to a veteran house architect in Texas, USA, rough and precise. His gaze crossed over the glass and scanned the party guests in his own backyard. He didn't want to throw the party, but his wife Charlotte insisted, saying it was to celebrate their 10th anniversary and to show off the gardens of their recently redecorated suburban Dallas home. Nathan sighed deeply, feeling an inexplicable sense of unease. The entire Texas Summer in Bloom celebration was overflowing with joy as friends made their way through the elaborate gardens and decorative lights twinkled in the twilight. Nathan watched Charlotte, her blonde hair shining in the setting sun. 10 years of marriage, and she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Charlotte is a successful interior designer, and they met on a construction project in Austin. Her laughter echoed through the garden, the glass of wine in her hand raised gracefully in homage to some joke. However, when Nathan saw her talking to Marcus, he felt a twinge in his stomach. Marcus is one of Charlotte's most recent clients, a wealthy oil industry businessman who owns an expensive yacht and shoulders twice as wide as Nathan's. Charlotte smiles too much at Marcus, stands too close, touches too often. The details stung Nathan's skin like shards of glass. "Hey, are you okay?" Nathan's best friend Tyler, a firefighter with the Dallas City Fire Department and a longtime friend of Nathan's since his college days, took a seat next to him. "Pretty good," Nathan grunted, his eyes still locked on his wife and Marcus. "Just a little tired." "Yeah, these parties do drain energy," Tyler said casually, but his eyes followed Nathan's line of sight. "You know, if anything happens, you can tell me." Nathan turned to his friend, briefly pondering whether to share his recent suspicions. Over the past few months, Charlotte's behavior has changed. She began traveling frequently to Houston, the site of Marcus' corporate headquarters, and came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne and less interested in sex. More importantly, she became overprotective of her cell phone, taking it with her even in the shower, always placing it face down. When Nathan asked, she claimed that they were all related to an important client who needed to be kept in touch at all times. "It's nothing," Nathan said eventually, "just a stressful job." The party went well that night until the end. Most of the guests had already left, leaving only a handful of people to help clean up. Nathan is wiping the table when he hears Marcus' voice coming from behind him. "Your wife will spend tonight with me." Nathan turned around, his heart almost stopping. Marcus stood there with a sickeningly confident grin on his face, wearing a custom suit worth thousands of dollars, while Charlotte was right next to him, her face pale. Nathan's brain is on the verge of exploding. He had suspected, but now it was confirmed, right in his backyard, at their anniversary celebration. He felt a chill spread through his body, followed by a blazing rage. But he didn't explode. Instead, he became surprisingly calm. "You have 30 seconds to leave." Nathan's voice was low and dangerous. "Or I'll shoot you in the groin and you'll never feel your lifeblood again." The air in the room froze. Marcus's smile fades and he looks unsure if he wants to take this as a joke. "Dude, chill out. I was just kidding." 25 seconds. Nathan's gaze didn't waver. Marcus looks to Charlotte for help, but she just stands there, shocked and speechless. "Let me explain," Marcus began, but Nathan interrupted him. 20 seconds. "And I was a Texas state champion shooter." The last few guests left silently, leaving Nathan, Charlotte, and Marcus standing in the garden with a touch of tension in the air. "You're crazy," Marcus finally said, taking a few steps back. "Charlotte, we'll talk some other time." 15 seconds. Nathan's hand went to his waistband as if there was a gun there. In fact, there's nothing there, but Marcus doesn't need to know that. The relatively lax gun laws in Texas make the threat seem more credible. Marcus moved quickly through the garden and disappeared into the night, his expensive Italian leather shoes making a hurried sound on the gravel path. Nathan turned to Charlotte, whose wife was covering her mouth with her hand, fear and shame in her eyes. "Nathan, I can explain. Get in the house." Nathan's voice was awfully calm. In the living room, Nathan stood in front of the fireplace, staring at their wedding photos. Charlotte sat on the couch, her hands twisted together. The sound of insects chirping in the Texas night came through the window, contrasting with the silence inside. "How long?" Nathan asked, still with his back to her. 3 months, Charlotte admitted in a small voice. Nathan, I'm sorry, it's just. Just what? Nathan turned to face her, the calm in his voice beginning to crumble. Just a mistake? Just meaningless sex? What difference does it make to you? I don't know, Charlotte cried. I feel neglected and alone. Marcus made me feel wanted and appreciated. He understands my professional ambitions. Needed? Nathan repeated incredulously. We've been married for 10 years, built this family, this life, and you feel neglected? Because a man who's known you for a few months said something sweet to you. You're always working. Charlotte fires back. For the past 2 years, you've always been at work, never at home, never cared about my feelings, never supported me in my career. Because I'm working on our future, Nathan practically shouted. Because you want this mansion, you want designer bags, you want a European vacation, you want all the luxuries. They fell into silence, years of pent-up resentment filling the room like poison. What now? Charlotte finally asked, her voice small. Nathan watched her for a long time. He loved her, and even in this moment, he still did. But some things are broken beyond repair. Trust, once lost, is like a broken crystal glass that cannot be re-glued. I don't know, he said finally, but I do know I can't stay under the same roof with you tonight. Nathan grabbed his keys and wallet and headed for the door. Nathan, wait. Charlotte caught up with him. We need to talk. We need to fix this. There's nothing to talk about right now, Nathan said. I need to think. As Nathan drove away from their Dallas villa, anger and a sense of betrayal consumed his entire thoughts. He had trusted her, loved her, and given her everything. And that's what he gets in return. Public humiliation in front of their mutual friends at their anniversary celebration. He drove through the city lights and eventually stopped at a motel off the highway. He found a motel to stay in and tossed and turned all night. Nathan's eyes were dry and tired as the first rays of the Texas morning sun filtered through the curtains, but his thoughts were unusually clear. He made a decision. He won't yell or get violent, but he'll never forgive and forget either. He'll make Charlotte and Marcus pay for their betrayal. This is not impulsive anger, but a calm determination. The next day, instead of going home, Nathan went to his office in downtown Dallas. As a successful architect, he has his own firm and a group of trusted employees. He closed his office door and dialed a phone number. Wallace Investigations. A dry male voice rang out on the other end of the line. I need your services, Nathan said bluntly. On a personal matter. 2 hours later, a middle-aged man in a plain suit with a plain face but sharp eyes sat in Nathan's office. He's Drew Wallace, an ex-cop who's now one of the most respected private investigators in Dallas. So, you suspect your wife of cheating on you, Drew concluded after hearing Nathan's account. Not suspicion, confirmation, Nathan corrected. I need proof, all the proof I can find. Hotel records, photos, texts, emails, financial transactions, everything. Drew nodded, showing no judgment. It's just another case for him. Who is the other side? Marcus Hemington, oil industry, Houston headquarters, lives in a mansion on Riverside Drive. Drew quickly jotted down the information in his notebook. What are you going to do with this evidence? Nathan looked at him calmly. Divorce, of course. But I'd also like to know more about Marcus himself. His business, his background, his secrets. Drew raised his eyes and seemed to realize that this was more than just a run-of-the-mill cheating investigation. I understand. Investigations can be expensive. Money is not the issue, Nathan said. Thoroughness and confidentiality are. 3 days later, Nathan returned home and found an exhausted-looking Charlotte. She seemed to have hardly slept. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her makeup was not as perfect as it used to be. You're back, she said, hope in her voice. I thought you might. We need to talk, he said calmly. Charlotte nodded, hoping to see it in her eyes. You're back. Does that mean? No, Nathan interrupted. This is not a reconciliation. It's about what comes next. They sat at the kitchen table, where countless meals and laughs had been shared. Now it feels like a strange battlefield. I hired a private investigator, Nathan said bluntly. Charlotte's face turned pale. What? Before I found out about you and Marcus that day, Nathan continued, his voice unusually calm. I'd been suspicious for weeks. So I hired someone. He's got pictures, hotel records, screenshots of text messages. Nathan, you have no right to dash. I have a right to know the truth. Nathan's voice turned icy. I have a right to protect myself when my wife is cheating on me and possibly planning to empty my bank account. Charlotte looked up in shock. What? I've never. Nathan pulled a stack of papers out of his briefcase and set them on the table. These are records of your text messages with Marcus. He flipped to a specific page of records. This entry is from last month, when you discussed how to transfer funds to an offshore account before the divorce. Charlotte lowered her head, tears dripping onto the tabletop. What are you going to do? Tell everyone? Humiliate me? No, Nathan said. I'm going to get a divorce. Fairly, but not in your favor. Charlotte looked up with fear in her eyes. What do you mean? It means that I will give you your fair share of the property, no more and no less. But I won't support your lifestyle. I won't give you alimony. We don't have children, and you have your own career. But this house, it was bought with my money before we were married, Nathan reminded her. And I have the paperwork to prove it, and my attorney has it ready. You can have your half, but not this house. Charlotte's tears are flowing even harder. Nathan, please, we can fix this. Those texts were just spur-of-the-moment thoughts. I never really intended to. No, we can't. Nathan stood up. This marriage is over for me. I'll move to the guest room until this is over. You can continue to live in the master bedroom, but I suggest you start looking for a new place to live. Over the next week, Nathan began to systematically implement his plan. He doesn't just want a divorce and to get rid of Charlotte. He wants to make sure that both Marcus and Charlotte pay for their betrayal. First, he contacted one of the best divorce lawyers in Dallas, Laura Thompson. In her office, Nathan explained the situation in detail and showed all the evidence Drew had gathered. You have a strong case, Laura confirmed, looking over the paperwork. The evidence of infidelity is overwhelming. And with the evidence of the attempted transfer of joint property, the judge will be very biased in your favor. I'm going to make sure she doesn't get anything extra, Nathan said. Only the minimum required by law. Laura nodded, but with some hesitation. As you know, Texas is a community property state. Assets acquired during a marriage are usually divided equally, regardless of fault. I know, Nathan replied. But I already own the house and most of the company before I got married. I have the paperwork to prove it. And I won't ask for anything unreasonable. I just don't want to give her anything extra. Laura agreed to the strategy and began preparing the paperwork. Meanwhile, Nathan pays Drew an additional fee to delve into Marcus' business activities. I want to know everything about him, Nathan instructed, especially any possible violations. Drew looks a little worried. What are you going to do? Good to know, Nathan replied simply. 2 weeks later, Drew returned with a shocking report. According to his investigation, Marcus's oil services company committed numerous violations, including environmental violations, bribing officials to obtain contracts, tax evasion, and the worst of all, using materials on government projects that did not meet safety standards while charging for premium materials. Is any of this information supported by evidence? Nathan asked, scrutinizing the report. Most of them have, Drew replied. Some require further investigation to confirm, but there's enough evidence to start one. Nathan nodded in satisfaction. Thank you for your excellent work. Over the next few weeks, Nathan orchestrates his plan for revenge. Instead of acting impulsively, he carefully considered every detail as if he were designing a building. He gathered all the evidence of Marcus's wrongdoing, including surreptitious photos of the job site, copies of internal documents, and even employee testimony. Meanwhile, divorce proceedings have begun. Charlotte hired her own attorney to try to get more of the property. She denied attempting to transfer funds, claiming the texts were just idle chatter. However, her position is weak in the face of overwhelming evidence of infidelity. To add to Nathan's anger, he discovers that Charlotte has begun moving her personal belongings to Marcus Mansion. Through Drew's surveillance reports, he learned that she spent almost every night there, as if she had forgotten she had a husband. One night, while organizing papers at home, Nathan discovers one of Charlotte's old notebooks. Looking through it, he was surprised to find diaries detailing the development of her relationship with Marcus. Not from 3 months ago, but from 6 months ago, much earlier than she claimed. Even more shocking, the diary details how Nathan was manipulated into working long hours to create opportunities for her to spend time with Marcus. This last ounce of deception completely destroys any attachment to Charlotte in Nathan's mind. He photocopied key pages of the diary and gave them to Laura as additional evidence. All this is useful, Laura confirmed. It proves that her infidelity lasted much longer than she claimed, and that it was premeditated, not some moment of weakness. Nathan nodded. I want to speed things up. I'm tired of sharing space with her. Laura looked at him understandingly. I'll do my best to move forward, but the legal process takes time. Meanwhile, Nathan begins to execute the second phase of his revenge plan. He learned that Marcus' company was bidding on a large government contract, a project that would bring millions of dollars in revenue and prestige to the company. It's a perfect opportunity. He created an encrypted email account and began sending anonymous tips to state regulators, environmental organizations, and several major media outlets. Each email was accompanied by detailed evidence, including photographs, copies of documents, and witness statements. He also highlighted Marcus's fraudulent practices on government programs and how they jeopardized public safety. Initially, the response was not obvious. But a few weeks later, a local newspaper published an investigative story about Marcus' alleged violations. This caused a ripple effect, and more media outlets began to pick up on the story. Soon after, the state announced it would investigate the allegations and suspended Marcus from participating in new government programs. Nathan followed these developments closely and felt a cold satisfaction. But he didn't stop there. He contacted several old and influential friends in the oil industry to make sure they were aware of the investigations and allegations. Soon, Marcus' business partners began to alienate him, and banks became reluctant to extend new lines of credit. When Nathan returns home a month later, he finds Charlotte and Marcus talking in the living room. They looked close and cozy, as if it was their home, not Nathan's. "What are you doing here?" Nathan asked, his voice low and dangerous. Marcus stood up and raised his hands. "Hey man, Charlotte just needs some support." "In my house." Nathan took a step forward. "After you betrayed me, you have the gall to set foot in my house." "Nathan, calm down." Charlotte stood between the two. "Marcus is just here to help me pack some things." "Packing?" Nathan asked, confused. "Yes," Charlotte straightened up. "Since you've decided to end the marriage, I think I should move out." Marcus offered to let me stay at his place. Nathan felt a wave of dizziness. They planned everything, even before he decided to get a divorce. It wasn't just a moment of passion, it was a calculated betrayal. "How thoughtful." Nathan's voice was filled with sarcasm. "You two do match. The deceiver and the deceiver." "Nathan, come on," Charlotte pleaded. "This is hard enough as it is." "Difficult." Nathan laughed, a laughter devoid of joy. "You know what's hard? Find out that your wife, your partner, the most important person in your life, has been betraying you. That's what's hard." Marcus took a step forward and assumed a protective stance. "Look, Nathan, I know you're pissed off, but it is what it is. You need to accept reality and move on." "Fuck, you've already humiliated her in court. Isn't that enough?" Nathan watched Marcus for a long time, then turned to Charlotte. "Do you love him?" Charlotte looked surprised and didn't answer immediately. "It's a simple question, Charlotte. Do you love Marcus?" I don't know," Charlotte finally said. "Everything is so confusing right now." "But that didn't stop you from moving in with him," Nathan noted. "Funny, isn't it?" Marcus looks impatient. "Look, we didn't come here to be judged by you. Charlotte needs her stuff, and then we go. By the way, those anonymous tips you had about my company? We all know it's you." Nathan looked at him expressionlessly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus sneered. "Don't pretend. You're the only one with the motivation to do it. But you know what? It doesn't affect me in any way. I have lawyers, connections, and enough money to take care of these little troubles." "Yes?" Nathan asked calmly. "I wish you luck then." Charlotte pulled on Marcus's arm. "Let's go upstairs and get our stuff." Nathan stepped back and made an inviting gesture. "Be my guest. But know this, Charlotte. Once you walk out that door, there's no turning back." Charlotte hesitated, but Marcus took her hand and guided her upstairs to gather her things. Nathan stood in the living room, listening to the sounds of them moving around upstairs, feeling a strange mixture of relief and pain. 2 hours later, Charlotte came downstairs with a couple of suitcases. She looked both decided and scared. "Is that all?" Nathan asked, his voice softening a bit. Charlotte nodded, tears in her eyes. "I think so. Nathan, I'm really sorry things turned out this way." "Me too," Nathan said, suddenly feeling very tired. I'm really sorry." As Charlotte and Marcus left, Nathan closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. The home had suddenly become so empty, so silent. But underneath the sadness and anger, there is a determination taking shape. He'll rebuild his life, but first, he needs to make sure Charlotte and Marcus pay for their behavior. Over the next few days, Nathan stepped up his program. He sent evidence to additional regulators, including the FBI and the Securities and Exchange Commission. He also contacted a number of disgruntled employees at Marcus and encouraged them to come forward as whistleblowers. At the same time, he begins to focus on Marcus' personal life. Through Drew's investigation, he discovers that Marcus has a hidden history. He's married with 2 children, but his wife and children live in San Antonio and almost never appear in public. This means that Marcus not only cheated on Nathan, but also on Charlotte. Nathan decides to use this information as his ultimate revenge killer. He began collecting evidence, including photographs of Marcus's family, copies of marriage certificates, and school records. A week later, on a Friday night, Nathan was sitting at home alone with the evening news playing on the TV. Suddenly, a familiar name caught his attention. Oil services giant Marcus Hemington was arrested today by the FBI on suspicion of commercial fraud, bribery, and misrepresentation. The newscaster gravely announced, according to the indictment, Hemington is accused of using substandard materials on government contracts while charging the government for premium materials that led to potential safety hazards. Nathan turned up the volume and listened carefully to every detail. His plan worked faster than he expected. The news report mentioned that the tip came from an inside source, but Nathan knew the truth. His anonymous tip triggered an investigation, and the points of evidence he provided pointed officials in the right direction. The ringing phone interrupted his thoughts. "It's Drew. Did you watch the news?" Drew asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Looking at it," Nathan replied. "It's a lot more serious than I expected," Drew said. "The FBI doesn't usually act this quickly unless they already have tons of evidence." "Or they received a reliable anonymous tip," Nathan said calmly. Drew was silent for a moment. "Nathan, I need to ask you a question, and it's just between us. Have you ever done anything beyond the scope of our investigation?" "I just made sure that justice was served," Nathan replied. "I didn't do anything illegal. I'm just providing information." "Okay." Drew seemed to accept that answer, but be careful. If they trace the source of the report back to you, there could be trouble. Retaliation against a whistleblower is a crime, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. "I've taken precautions," Nathan assured. "All messages are sent through encrypted channels, nothing that can be traced back to me." The next morning, Nathan got a text from Charlotte. "We need to talk." He did not reply immediately. Instead, he turned on his computer and started browsing the news. Marcus' arrest made headlines as more details began to emerge. His company faces millions of dollars in fines, investors are pulling out, and the stock price has plummeted. What's more, there are reports that he could face up to 30 years in prison. Nathan enjoyed it all and felt a cold satisfaction. The taste of revenge is sweet indeed, especially when it is achieved by legal means. A few hours later, his doorbell rang. Nathan opens the door to find Charlotte standing there with red eyes and messy makeup. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice quivering. Nathan hesitated, then turned on his side to let her in. They stood in the foyer, the atmosphere tense. "You got it," Charlotte said, not a question. "About Marcus' arrest?" "Yes, the whole state of Texas knows." "No," Charlotte shook her head, "about his family, his wife and child." Nathan didn't act surprised. "Yes, I know." Charlotte looks both angry and hurt. "You knew this and didn't tell me. Why should I tell you?" Nathan asked rhetorically. "You chose him, remember? You moved into his house and started a new life." "Because it's basic human nature," Charlotte cried out. "You let me stay in a married man's house, knowing full well that I was once again being cheated on. Just like you lied to me," Nathan pointed out calmly. "What special treatment do you think you deserve?" Charlotte's shoulders slumped and tears began to stream down her face. "It's all over. Marcus was arrested, his assets were frozen, and I was kicked out of the house." "Thrown out by whom?" "His wife," Charlotte said bitterly. "Apparently the house was purchased in her name. She showed up there last night with 2 kids and a lawyer." Nathan couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy, but it was quickly suppressed. He remembers his pain and humiliation, how Charlotte betrayed him and planned to empty their accounts. "So, where do you live now?" he asked. "The hotel," Charlotte replied. "But I don't have much money left. Most of my clients I met through Marcus, and they don't answer my calls now." Nathan nods, understanding the situation. "What do you want from me, Charlotte?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe just a listening ear, maybe a shoulder to lean on. I'm really lonely right now." "You can't stay here," Nathan said definitively. "This isn't your home anymore." Charlotte nodded, once again in tears. "I know. I'm not here to ask for that. I don't know where to go." Nathan walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed one to Charlotte. "I suggest you contact your parents or a friend. Start over." "My parents are in Florida," Charlotte said, "and I didn't want to intrude on their retirement. As for friends, after all this, I'm not sure I have many friends left." "That's the result of your own choices," Nathan said unflinchingly. "And just as I have to deal with what you've done to me, you have to deal with the consequences of your choices." The divorce proceedings ended in a few weeks. The judge was almost entirely on Nathan's side due to the overwhelming evidence of Charlotte's infidelity and attempted transfer of assets. Charlotte received half of the community property during the marriage, but because of the prenuptial agreement, she could not receive any part of Nathan's house or business. Meanwhile, Marcus' legal problems continue to worsen. More whistleblowers have come forward, exposing widespread fraud at his company. His wife filed for divorce and sought full custody of the children. The media also started digging into his private life, including his relationship with Charlotte. Charlotte found herself in the hot seat of the tabloids, described as a designer who collaborated with the fraudster. Her professional reputation was severely damaged and clients were canceling contracts. She was eventually forced to close her Dallas design studio and move back to Florida to live with her parents. For Nathan, it's all part of the perfect revenge plan. He didn't hurt anyone directly, but let the truth come out and let the deceivers face the consequences of their own actions. At Marcus's trial, prosecutors presented a great deal of evidence, including those offered anonymously by Nathan. Marcus was convicted of multiple counts of fraud, sentenced to 15 years in prison with no possibility of early parole, and fined millions of dollars. His company went bankrupt and his fortune was wiped out. One day, Nathan received an email from Charlotte. She writes that she found a basic sales job in a department store in Florida and lived frugally and simply. She admits her mistakes, expresses remorse for her past behavior, and hopes that Nathan will find happiness. Nathan did not respond to this email. He doesn't hate Charlotte, and he doesn't want her to suffer. But he doesn't forgive her either, much less forget her betrayal. Her confession and remorse came too late, not out of sincerity, but because her plan had failed. When journalists contacted Nathan a few months later for some reason to ask for comment on this whole scandal, he simply said, "Some people are destined to learn a hard lesson, that integrity and loyalty are not things to be thrown around. Every choice has consequences." As the leaves begin to fall in Texas at dusk in the fall, Nathan walks around his newly purchased Riverside Estates, which happens to be the upscale neighborhood where Marcus used to live. The divorce has been finalized for almost a year now, and life has taken on a new, triumphant rhythm. His construction company thrived, in part because he took on projects and contacts that had belonged to the other side after Marcus' downfall. His integrity and professionalism have earned him the trust of his clients, which has significantly enhanced his reputation in the industry. Every time he drives past the office building that once belonged to Marcus, now purchased and redecorated by a new company, he feels a cold satisfaction. In his private life, Nathan maintains a deliberate solitude. He turns down dating offers from his friends and focuses on his work and the outcome of his revenge. He enjoyed every moment of seeing Charlotte and Marcus suffer, and it became a new driving force in his life. One day, Tyler finds Nathan at a weekend barbecue. "You okay, man?" Tyler asked, handing Nathan a beer. "Since all that happened, you've become." "It's different." Nathan took a sip of his beer and looked out over the Texas sunset. "I'm fine. In fact, I've never been better." Tyler shook his head. "No, you're not okay. You're steeped in revenge, aren't you? All those reports about Marcus, that was your doing, wasn't it?" Nathan didn't answer directly, but his eyes hinted at the truth. "Look," Tyler continued, "I understand how you feel. What Charlotte and Marcus did was unforgivable. But you can't let revenge define the rest of your life. Why not? Nathan asks rhetorically. It gives me purpose. It gives me fulfillment. What's wrong with seeing those who betrayed me pay? The thing is, Tyler said, it's not you. Nathan, I've known you for 20 years. You've always been a principled, honest man. Now you've allowed yourself to become a revenge machine. Nathan shook his head. You don't understand, Tyler. What do you do when your whole world falls apart? When you realize that someone you love, someone you trust, has been stabbing you in the back? I don't know, Tyler replied honestly. But I hope I don't let it consume me. The conversation made Nathan think long and hard. He does find a morbid pleasure in revenge, enjoying seeing Charlotte and Marcus suffer. But is this really the life he wants? Forever dwelling on past hurts? He began to reflect more on his behavior. While his vengeance was legally justified, he simply exposed the truth. Was it morally right? Has he allowed himself to become like those who hurt him? A few weeks later, Nathan received an unexpected phone call. It's Marcus' wife, Vanessa. I hope I'm not disturbing you, she said, her voice elegant and restrained. But I think we should talk. They met at a quiet cafe. Vanessa Hemington is an elegant woman who maintains her dignity despite the storm. I know it was you, she said bluntly, as they sat down. Those reports, that evidence. You're the one who put Marcus in jail. Nathan didn't deny it. He deserves it. Vanessa nodded. Yes, he does deserve it. But I'm not here to condemn you, Nathan. Instead, I've come to thank you. Nathan looked at her in surprise. For years, Vanessa continued, I've been living Marcus's lies. I knew he was unfaithful. I knew his business was unclean, but I never had the courage to leave. I have kids to think about and a family to maintain. Your actions have given me the opportunity to walk out and give me and my children a new life. It's a twist Nathan never saw coming. He has been so focused on getting revenge on Charlotte and Marcus that he has never considered the possibility that his actions could have a positive impact on others. How are you now? He asked, sincerely concerned. It's okay, Vanessa replied. I used the divorce settlement to open a small art gallery. The kids are adjusting to their new lives, but they are strong. Most importantly, we now have a real life, not a facade built on lies. The conversation gave Nathan a new perspective. Revenge is not just about punishing those who hurt him. It can also be about liberating those who have been hurt by the same deceivers. Over the next few months, Nathan slowly began to change his mindset. Instead of focusing on Charlotte and Marcus on a daily basis, he begins to focus more on his own life and future. He rededicated himself to his construction work, not just to make money, but to create something of real value. He began taking on pro bono projects to design affordable housing for low-income neighborhoods. These projects may not have been highly profitable, but they gave him a different kind of satisfaction, a satisfaction of helping others by creating rather than destroying. One day, while working on the site of a community building project, Nathan noticed a female photographer taking pictures of the building. She has a natural demeanor and is completely immersed in her work, capturing the details of buildings in different lights. Who are these pictures for? Nathan asked as he approached her. Houston Chronicle, she replied, not looking up from her camera. I'm doing a feature on neighborhood redevelopment. Nathan nodded, admiring her concentration. I'm the architect for this project, Nathan Reed. The female photographer finally put down her camera and turned to him. She has bright green eyes and dark brown hair tied up in a casual style. Emma Reynolds, she extended her hand. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Reed. It's a terrific program. Thanks, Nathan replied, unexpectedly feeling a little proud. Just trying to do something worthwhile. That's more than most people do, Emma said, picking up her camera again, especially in this city. They talked for a while about the program, the building, and the needs of the community. Nathan was impressed by Emma's powers of observation and attention to detail. She wasn't just taking pictures, she was understanding the story and purpose behind the building. If you don't mind, Emma said before leaving, I'd like to interview you for my feature. The idea behind the project and your motivation as an architect will add depth to the article. Nathan hesitated. For the past few years, he has avoided media attention and focused on his personal revenge. But now he finds himself interested in sharing a positive vision for the program. Okay, he agreed. Anytime. A week later, Emma came to Nathan's office for an interview. Their conversations begin with the project, but quickly moved to broader topics: architectural philosophy, community responsibility, and even personal values. "You know," Emma said during a nap, as they sat by the office window sipping coffee, "I did some research on you. You've worked on a lot of high-end commercial projects, but now you've moved on to community work. It's a pretty big shift." Nathan set down his coffee cup and considered what to say in response. "Let's just say my priorities have changed." Emma's eyes show she knows there could be more to the story. "Is it because of that big scandal a year ago? Marcus Hemington and your ex-wife?" Nathan tensed up. "How do you know this? I'm a journalist, remember?" Emma smiles, though it's mostly photographers. "And that was big news at the time." Nathan sighed. "It wasn't my proudest moment. But it changes you," notes Emma. "From commercial designer to community architect. In a sense, that's growth, isn't it?" Nathan had never thought of it in that way. In his mind, his community work was partly a distraction from his revenge and partly an attempt to make up for some of the guilt he felt over it. But there is a truth in Emma's words: through pain, he does discover a new kind of purpose. "Maybe," he admitted. "But can we keep this conversation off the record? I'd rather the article focus on the project than my personal life." Emma nodded in understanding. "Sure. But privately, if you need a listening ear, I'm here." Sometimes it helps to talk about it. Over time, Nathan and Emma begin to develop a strange friendship. She came in regularly to photograph the progress of the project, and they would meet for dinner or coffee after work to discuss various topics. Emma doesn't bring up Charlotte or Marcus again, but her very presence seems to encourage Nathan to think more about the future than the past. One day, Nathan received an unexpected package. Inside is a photo album documenting the complete process of his community housing project, from the initial ruins to the completed home to the moments of joy when new residents move in. The album was accompanied by a note: "Sometimes we need to see the beauty of what we create, not just what we destroy." Emma. This simple gift touched something deep inside Nathan. For years, he'd basked in the satisfaction of revenge, enjoying seeing Charlotte and Marcus suffer. But Emma's album reminds him that the power to create is far more enduring and meaningful than the power to destroy. A few days later, when they meet at a project site, Nathan invites Emma to join him for dinner, this time not to discuss work. "Is this a date, Mr. Reed?" Emma teased, a glint of humor in her eyes. "Depends on your answer, Ms. Reynolds," Nathan replied, feeling relief for the first time in years. Emma smiled, a warm and genuine smile. "Then my answer is yes." As their relationship grows, Nathan finds himself thinking less and less about the past and looking forward to the future. Emma's candor and honesty, contrasted with Charlotte's deceptiveness and manipulation, renews his belief that real human connection is possible. One night, after a quiet dinner, Nathan decides to tell Emma the whole story: not just Charlotte's betrayal, but his vengeance, and how he systematically ruined Marcus's life and career. "You know what the saddest part is?" Nathan asked when he finished, as they sat on the balcony of his house, looking out at the Texas stars. "At the time, revenge gave me so much satisfaction. It feels like a victory to see them pay the price. But now, it just feels hollow." Emma was silent for a moment, digesting the confession. "Do you regret it?" Nathan thought about it. "Not exactly. Marcus did commit those crimes, and he did deceive countless people, including his wife, his clients, and the government. In a way, I just accelerated the inevitable. But my motivation: I don't apologize for revealing the truth, but I do apologize for enjoying their pain." Emma nodded, understanding his mixed feelings. "You know, in photography, we often need darkness to show light. Maybe you need to go through that dark period to find purpose and meaning now." Nathan looks at her and appreciates her understanding and insight. "How did you get so smart?" Emma laughed. "Lots of failures and some good choices. Just like all of us." A few months later, Emma moved into Nathan's house. Their relationship is built on mutual respect and honesty, everything Nathan and Charlotte lacked. Meanwhile, Nathan continues to follow Charlotte and Marcus, but no longer for the thrill of revenge, but for some strange sense of closure. He learned that Marcus had had a difficult time in prison, that his appeal had been rejected, and that his property had been confiscated to compensate the victims. Charlotte's life in Florida hasn't improved. She struggles to rebuild her design career, but the shadow of scandal follows her. Her parents were in poor health and medical expenses consumed much of her savings. She eventually found work in a small furniture store, far from the luxurious life she once dreamed of. Nathan found himself feeling no longer content with this, but a complex mixture of emotions, sympathy, regret, and even a hint of guilt, not to his act of vengeance itself, but to the pleasure he once derived from it. One day, while Nathan and Emma are sorting through some of his old belongings, they find a box containing photos and mementos of him and Charlotte. "Do you want to handle these?" Emma asked cautiously. Nathan looked at the items: wedding photos, vacation mementos, memories created together. They used to represent happiness, then became painful reminders, and now they are just pieces of the past. Yes, he decided, it's time. Instead of just throwing them away, they organized the photos and memorabilia into a box and placed it in the attic. Not to be nostalgic, but to recognize that that relationship had existed, had been a part of his life, no matter how it ended. A few weeks later, Nathan received an unexpected phone call. It's Drew, the private investigator who helped him gather evidence against Marcus. "There's something I think you should know," Drew said, his voice serious. "Marcus Hemington killed himself in prison this morning." Nathan felt a surge of shock. Though he had wanted Marcus to pay, death had never been the outcome he wanted. "How did it happen?" he asked, his voice low. "The exact details are unclear," Drew replied, "but it is rumored that he recently received the last court judgment regarding his remaining assets. He's got nothing left." Nathan hung up the phone and sat there for a long time, contemplating the cause and effect of it all. His chain of vengeance now ends with finality, not with triumph or fulfillment, but with a heavy and complicated ending. When Emma comes home, she finds Nathan sitting in the dark. He tells her about Marcus and the conflicting feelings he has inside. "I never wanted it to end like this," he admitted. "I wanted him to pay, but not like this." Emma sat next to him and held his hand. "It's not your fault, Nathan. Marcus made his own choices, starting with the first lie and ending with the final act." "But I pushed for this," Nathan said. "I made sure his crimes were exposed, made sure he lost everything." "You exposed the truth," Emma corrected. "The truth may cause pain, but hiding it only leads to more hurt. Marcus's crimes hurt a lot of people: his customers, his employees, his family, even you and Charlotte." Nathan nodded, understanding her point. "But still, Marcus's death feels like an exorbitant price to pay, one he never thought he'd have to pay." The next day, Nathan contacted Vanessa to express his condolences. Even though Marcus hurt her, he's still the father of her child. "Thanks for calling," Vanessa said, her voice calm but tired. "It's been hard on the kids, but we'll get through it. If there's anything I can do." Nathan offered. "Thanks, but we'll be fine." "I was prepared for that possibility. Marcus has always been a proud man, and losing everything was too much for him to take." The conversation made Nathan think a lot. Vanessa has maintained her dignity and strength in the face of so much betrayal and pain. Instead of being consumed by the desire for revenge, she focuses on rebuilding her life and the lives of her children. A few days later, Nathan received an email from Charlotte. She writes that she heard about Marcus's death and was thinking about the choices and trajectory of all of their lives. She did not ask for sympathy or forgiveness, but simply expressed deep reflection on past mistakes. This time, Nathan replied. He didn't offer forgiveness or express anger, but simply acknowledged her email and wished her well in her new life in Florida. It's not reconciliation, it's an acknowledgement, recognizing what happened in the past while moving forward. Over time, Nathan and Emma's relationship continues to grow. Their love is not based on passion or possessiveness, but on mutual respect, honesty, and shared values. They work together, create together, and build the future together. The community housing program has been a great success and has attracted national attention. Nathan's architectural practice began to focus on sustainable and community-oriented projects that not only brought him professional satisfaction, but also contributed positively to society. One day, when they were on the set of a new project and Emma was filming with her camera, Nathan asked, "Do you think we can really learn from our past mistakes? Or are we doomed to repeat them?" Emma put the camera down and looked at him intently. "I think learning is possible, but it takes courage to face our dark side, admit our mistakes, and then choose a different path. Just like you did." Nathan smiled, a real and unburdened smile. "Just like we did." This simple exchange is where Nathan realizes that he has finally and truly let go of the past. Charlotte's betrayal and his revenge no longer define him. They were just a small part of the puzzle of his life, a chapter that had ended. Now he's focused on the future he's creating with Emma, on the positive impact he's having on his community through his work, and on becoming a better, stronger, more compassionate person. As they finished their work for the day and stood in front of the building that would soon be the new home for many families, Nathan felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. Not the brutal fulfillment that comes from revenge, but the pure fulfillment that comes from creating and contributing. Ready to go home? Emma asked, packing up her equipment. Yes, Nathan replied, realizing that home was no longer just a place, but a feeling and a connection that he and Emma had created together. I'm ready. As they drive away from the construction site and the Texas sunset colors the sky a golden red, Nathan realizes that the sweetest revenge in life is achieved not by destroying others, but by building a better version of himself. He has traveled through the dark tunnel of vengeance and has finally discovered the light on the other side, not by forgiving or forgetting, but by growing and transforming. Charlotte and Marcus pay for their choices, and Nathan, by choosing to let go of his hatred and bitterness, earns himself a chance at a new life. This is the path beyond revenge, a path to true freedom and happiness. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.